Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September regular board meeting. Hiram King Williams was born on this date, so that's Hank Williams, was born on this date in 1923 in Alabama. And he contributed many important songs to country music that are being commemorated on our cable offering, the Ken Burns special about country music. One of his favorite songs that I especially like is Your Cheatin' Heart, and also I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. This September has been extremely hot, running 10 to 15 degrees above the normal 80-degree high average. And this temperature increase has not been lost on the Franklin County High School students who have followed Greta Thunberg's suggestion and will be gathering for a climate strike on Friday, September 20th from 12:15 to 1:30 on the front Capitol steps here in Frankfort. The suggestion is to wear red or black in solidarity with them. Their concern is over climate change, which is affecting many parts of our existence here. Monday, October 23rd is the fall equinox, meaning that the sun will be aligned with the equator and that globally every area will have equal parts sun and darkness, so light and dark. And autumn starts the next day on the 24th, meaning that there'll be less and less night, or more night each day. I'd also like to mention on Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, October 25th, is the 10-year anniversary of the Grand Theater that's been sharing cultural activities here in Frankfort for 10 years. And last, I'd like to note that for Vice Chair Walt Baldwin and myself, that this is our 48th regular board meeting. So to start the meeting, I'm Anna Marie Pavlik-Rosen, Chair of the Frankfort Plant Board. To my right, Walt Baldwin, Vice Chair. Don Hale, Secretary Treasurer. Steve Mason, Board Member. Jeff Bradshaw, commuting to us from a distance, electronically, Board Member. And our attorney for the board, James Liebman. So our first item this evening.
Madam Chair, could I say something
Yes.
before we start?
Okay, yes.
Alluding back to your 48 consecutive meeting.
Well, regular board meetings, yes.
I appreciate that, and I just want to say that I think all these board members are very smart and intelligent people. I'll exclude myself, because I don't want to sound that way. But over the last week or so, through the media and through the meetings, I have been reminded of an old gospel song that I used to hear now, still hear this, and basically, and it's my religion, so I'll say it this way: if it were not for the Lord on my side, where would I be? And that song that's a song that has come to my mind because the past week's rhetoric, both verbal and print, has said to me, if it were not for two members on this board, if they were not on the plant board side, where would the plant board be? And I just think that's not a way that this board should be. We are collected, whether we are dissenting or agreeing with things. And it takes 3 votes to make anything happen. So anything can happen. Things that have happened have been 3 votes. It's never been just 2 votes. And the second thing I'd like to say is all the accomplishments, if that's what they were, and I believe most of them were, that have been talked about over the last week or so. I really want to thank the Frankfort Plant Board staff, because they are the ones that have come up with the idea for the most part. They've researched the idea if it didn't come from them, and they've had to implement the idea when it was done. So if any accomplishments and success of any of the things that have been talked about over the last week and a half, the credit should go to the Frankfort Plant Board staff. And lastly, a couple of things that hit my mind last week as I listened to the rhetoric and read the things, were some misconceptions out there that I thought needed to be addressed here. And one was about the rebate that we have given out, which is clear that we specified that this rebate was from the KYMEA savings that we had projected. Now, understanding that the initial projection for KYME was somewhere around 6.8 million. Subsequent to that projection, there has been litigation that has come before us that we are on an opposite end of. And in the spirit of conservatism, the municipalities through KYMEA has decided to hold back approximately $2 million of the projected annual savings. That's how we get from 6.8 to 4.8. Now, as I see right now, as I've heard and asked, we are on target to stay within the 4.8. We're getting on average about $400,000 savings a month, and I would assume that's also meaning that we're getting an extra $200 million that's being held in contingency if we end up on the negative side of the litigation that we are in, and this deals with the depancaking, so and those things. The other part of that coin that I heard put together was that this rebate came from the $3.4 million that came from KU. Now, as I understand it, as I've read, the KU situation actually started before we got to KYMEA. They notified, as I understand it, the municipals that there was going to be an added cost due to ash pond cleanup or whatever, and I'm not going to go into detail, and that the municipals would be on the hook for their share. Frankfurt share is somewhere around 3 point something. I don't know what Frankfurt share. I'm not going to say what it is. But the end result, they have come back this year and said that their estimate was over. So therefore, Frankfurt was due a $3.4 million refund. That is separate from the $4.6 million that we are projecting, adjusted projection from KYMEA. So if anyone wants to mash those together, put them together and say we're getting 7 point something million this year. 3 from KU unexpectedly and 4.6 projected. So the rebate is coming. The last point was KYMEA cost is, we've put X amount of dollars in the KYMEA, thrown it. KYMEA's cost, I think, is somewhere over $3 million. We're going to realize it in the first 8 months. So any investments that you can make and recoup your money within the first 2 quarters, half of the year, or 3 quarters of the year, I'm not sure that's a bad investment. I'm not. The jury's still out on KYMEA. I'm not a total endorser of KYMEA, but I also want to be a fair evaluator of KYMEA as we go forward.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Our first item of the actual meeting.
Can you just hold on just 1 sec?
I think anything else should be brought up in old and new business.
This doesn't have anything to do with old and new business. It was just in thanking the staff. We had the Customer Appreciation Day last week.
We will have a presentation on that later.
And I just wanted to thank the staff. It was hot. We had a great turnout, and the staff did a great job with that, and I just wanted to thank them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 1, consider approving minutes from the August 20th, 2019 board meeting. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at those? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 20th, 2019 board meeting.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor of approving the August 20th minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passed. Conduct a public hearing. This public hearing is usually conducted by the vice chair. So we'll go ahead with that.
This hearing will come to order. My name is Walt Baldwin. I have been requested by the board to conduct this hearing. With me today are board members and staff of the Frankfurt Electric and Water Plant Board. We're here to receive, We're here to receive comments regarding adjustments to the cable advertising rate card. This public hearing was advertised in accordance with the regulations for public notification and appeared in the weekend, September 7th through 8th, 2019 edition of the State Journal newspaper. To conduct this hearing in an organized fashion, we ask that you register with the secretary if you wish to speak. This hearing will be conducted informally and voluntarily by the Frankfurt Electric and Water Plant Board in order to accept comments on the above item. Both oral and written comments will be accepted. and any and all persons present who wish to make a statement will be afforded an opportunity to do so. If you have a written statement to accompany your oral presentation, a copy of the written statement should be provided to the board prior to your presentation. Oral presentation should be limited to no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, I will interrupt and request the presentation to be completed due to this time limit. I may ask questions of any person presenting oral comments where it is necessary to clarify the nature or substance of the comments. The board reserves the right to answer questions at a later date. It's our job as the board to fairly consider various points of view and information. We want public input and involvement, and I hope you do not find our standard procedures restrictive. Additional oral comments and written comments will be accepted and considered if they are submitted no later than the end of normal business hours on Monday, October 14th, 2019. To submit a comment, please contact FPB at 352-4372 or on our website, www.fpb.cc. Before we open the floor to comments, Mr. Scott Stanford will provide a summary of the hearing details.
Thank you. We're looking to set our maximum digital advertising rate to cap that at 120% above wholesale, which would still be 40% below competition. The goal is to bring our margin on digital closer to cable advertising, so if advertising dollars continue to shift to digital, we'll still be able to fund cable 10 and media services at the same level. And I'm here if anybody has any questions.
Do we have any comments or questions from the public? Do we have any comments or questions from the board? Hearing no comments or questions, we call this public hearing to a close. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Watt. Item number 3, accept clean unmodified audit report prepared by CROWE LLP for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, as required by the KRS 96.185.
Yes, I'd like to introduce, we have Scott Nickerson's partner with CROWE and Daniel Levitt here to help to present the audit to you all. So I'll just turn over to you, Scott.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Nickerson. I'm a partner at CROWE. We're pleased to serve you as auditors for the June 30, 2019 audit. Just to give you a brief overview of the audit process, I know you have draft financial statements as well as information related to the quality of financial reporting and recommendations. So I'll do a brief highlight for you today and be glad to answer any questions you might have. The first thing I want to point out is we're happy to report that management's financial statements earned a clean opinion. A clean opinion means that the financial statements as prepared by management are materially correct and the note disclosures meet the appropriate standards. And I like to say to all of my clients that it's as expected but never taken for granted. And I think the reason for that is the daily activities that the finance and accounting area performs to make sure that the financials that are presented to you throughout the year provide you the information you need and that there's no significant changes that occur at year end. At a high level, we're happy to report that there were no audit adjustments that impacted the bottom line. We did recommend a couple reclassification entries just to move them from one line to another. However, we believe that had no impact on the overall financial reporting as performed. We're also happy to report that looking at from a laws and regulations standpoint, we did not identify any issues that rose to a level of a significant deficiency or material weakness. Related to management letter recommendations, there are 2 items that are recurring from the prior year, and we call those in progress. The first item relates to continuous improvement related to documentation and I call it operationalizing your conflict of interest process. An example of some of the things that were in progress during the year include management creating a form for vendors when you're onboarding a new vendor and periodically when you're working with vendors to inquire of those vendors about any known relationships that should be evaluated. The second is related to something that we've reported, I think, in each of the last couple of years about areas that you can improve from a board meeting perspective of operationalizing the conflict of interest process. A good example of that is possibly having a standard agenda item so it brings awareness to everyone that if there is something, a matter to be brought to attention that it gets addressed at the beginning of a board meeting. That's one example. There are other examples that we present on our management letter related to that. I think those two items, those fall at a best practice or lower level deficiency. If there was something that rose to the level of significant deficiency or material weakness, then we would have communicated that to you much earlier than today. Daniel is just going to do a brief overview of significant changes over the prior year.
Hi, my name is Daniel Levin. I'm a manager with CROWE and the manager on this engagement. Just to give you a brief overview on some of the operational and financial side of things. From a financial standpoint, not much has changed operationally from the prior year. Essentially, there has been an increase due to the other revenue that Mr. Mason mentioned earlier, the $3.4 million related to the KU power refund. And then there was also a decrease in operating expenses related to the electric side of things as a result of the change in power providers during the year. So essentially, these two factors combined made up about the $7.5 million increase in revenue throughout the year, or net income. Other than that, everything was else pretty consistent. And essentially, that's all I have to add on that.
Just one more item. Related to your budget, within the financial statements, there's a budget to actual calculation, and the primary difference between budget to actual relates to that $3.4 million refund. So other than that, budget to actual is just about break even, which with a utility operation, that's usually a good measurement that you're following what you had planned to do, and that's what those activities were. I'm happy to report, to answer any questions you might have related to the audit itself or the financial statements.
Doesn't seem that we have any questions. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Ms. Rosen, if you might, for a minute, I'd like to thank the staff of the plant board. As Scott touched on, it takes a lot of people to get this clean audit opinion. So I'd just like to thank the meter reading department. You know, they're out there every day capturing accurate water and electric metering data to help us get proper bills out the door. Our customer service reps and IT that provide technical and customer support with billing. Our support services staff that does work on our purchasing and procurement policy and our inventory controls, and how we bring it all back together with the finance department, how it brings it all together. Submitting all the returns we have to do throughout the year, and bringing it all together into a gap-based financial statement that allowed us to get here today. And at the end, all the men and women that have to abide by the procurement policy and do those little steps daily. So it takes a whole team to do this, and I just wanted to extend that thank you to them.
Okay, thank you, David. Good points. Okay, next action item is accept financial.
Motion to accept the audit report.
Thank you, James. Do we have a motion to accept the audit report by CROWE LLP?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor of accepting the report?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Jeff. Good. Okay. Accept financials for the month of ending in August 31st, 2019. So, David?
Yes, Ms. Rosen, I'd like to start on page 79 of the board packet. So this is reporting to you on our second month of the 2019-20 fiscal year. Not a lot has changed since I reported. We reported on July last year. So I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. Line 65, our total assets as of August 31st, 2019 were approximately $180.7 million. You had our total liabilities, line 130, of just over $91.1 million against our net position, line 160, of $89.5 million, bringing our total liabilities and net position to equal our assets at $180.7 million approximately as of August 31st, 2019. Not a lot of change, like I said, from last month I reported, so things are going as expected there. I'd like to move over to page 80 and just cover our cash and investments schedule. Looking at line 80, total restricted and unrestricted cash as of August 31st, 2019 were $21,123,339. With line 140, our restricted and unrestricted investments, which we hold in certificates of deposit here in local financial institutions, was $18,184,397. We didn't have any changes in our debt balances in the month of August. No principal payments or debt payments of any kind. So I'd like to move over and just do a brief discussion about the operational performance through the first 2 months of the year. So I'm looking at page 83. Looking at our total revenue for the first 2 months of the year, approximately $16.8 million against our total operating expenses of just over $11.2 million, bringing gross contribution or gross margin to just over $5.6 million. You can see on line 285 that we have kept general and admin expenses in check at just over $3.8 million. And then we have our other revenue at $254,000, bringing our net contribution for these first 2 months of just under $2.1 million, which is, I would consider it very much in line with our budget at 2.2. I'd be glad to go over any questions you might have about our August financials, but that's a brief summary of where we are.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. If not, do we have a motion to accept the August financials?
I'll make a motion to accept the August financial statements.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor of accepting the financials for August? Aye.
Aye.
Public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make a public comment? Okay. Commissioner John Sauer will now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. First of all, I don't know quite who to thank, whether it's the Cable 10 personnel, the board, or maybe both. But I looked at our TV guide last week, and it was changed. No longer did we have to satisfy with that 3, 3.5, 4 sometimes, and see what's on and what's not on. But I really appreciate that. I didn't know if it was a board or if it was a Cable 10 idea. It doesn't really matter. It's for the betterment of the city, I feel, and that's all that really matters. The other thing is, I had some relatives. My older sister and my brother-in-law came in from Colorado, and of course they like to drink a lot of water. And they said, what in the world is this water? Maybe you all haven't heard about this. The water tasting and smelling the way it is. Now, you know, I'm old enough to remember sometimes when we don't have enough flow. They said, where do you get your water? And I said, well, from the Kentucky River. And back in the day when I was more familiar, maybe that's because of lack of flow in the river, or I'm sure there has to be a reason. Even if that is the reason, maybe we can filter the water a second time, maybe, rather than the standard. I don't know, but you all know.
Yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We will be discussing it a little bit later in the meeting.
Okay. I do see KYMEA on your agenda too. I think it's item 70, 175, 177. Just a thought since the discussion. And just a suggestion, you know, there seems to be some question about KYMEA. And I would suggest that maybe it would be a good time to bring their executive director here. I always enjoy, actually, a civil, good debate on any issue, and have that executive director give you kind of a state of the KYMEA address. Then it would be open for board members, for staff, to question whatever it is that might be on your mind. Just a suggestion. The other reason I wanted to speak was I saw that we have EV charging stations that might be on the city's agenda coming up, and I had just a little basic information on it. I guess to start off, just to quote, it's primarily to provide a service to our customers who own EV cars. I didn't know if in your study what percentage of your ratepayers own EV cars. Maybe somebody has done that work. I didn't know. Is that, do we know that number?
Well,
Okay.
I could interject there a little bit. It's not really so much for our customers, it's to attract people to our community as an economic development tool. So it's to sell electricity and to encourage people everywhere to drive an electric car and feel comfortable. The biggest problem with electric cars is range anxiety. You can't just go to a gas station or get a gallon gas or do something. You need to be able to recharge in a reasonable way. So it's not so much just to support people who live in the county or the city, but to support visitors.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good idea, but I think they kind of go hand in hand. Your customers should enjoy this particular benefit of the charging stations, and I'm for charging stations. I've mentioned that before. I mentioned that before in the April primary election, which was quite a few months ago. And also I noticed the concentration downtown. There are other places to visit in Frankfurt besides downtown, and I'm a downtown person. Don't misunderstand. But, you know, I know there are places on the east side or the west side, whether you're talking about Western Hills and Bondurant or out in the west side. You have Franklin County and Elkhorn Middle on the east side. You have one of the largest collection of cars at any one time is the CHR building, and I believe, how much time does it take a full charge on one of these CT 4000 series for a full charge?
Well, a charge varies. I'm not sure who manufactures a CT.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know who.
Are you talking about the charging unit itself?
The charger itself is called a CT 4000.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I misspoke.
Yeah, so it charges at a certain rate depending upon how much juice is already in the battery.
Sure.
So,
If your battery's dead, how long does it take to charge it?
okay,
You're rolling in there and you're really low.
I believe that the units we're talking about charge at about 18 miles an hour, or,
I don't remember off the top of my head. Travis, did you have it off the top of your head? Do you know what it is?
Batteries depend on model and.
Yeah, it would depend on the capacity of the battery.
but it is a level 2 charger.
Yeah.
So somewhere around that has been my experience with my electric car. So around 18 miles an hour, 18 to 20.
Okay.
Gary, did you want to add anything?
It's like, usually like 6 kilowatt per hour on the level 2. So every kilowatt hour usually runs 3.7 miles. That's kind of rate.
So if it's dead, it might take,
Depends on if it's a 60 or 70 kilowatt hour battery, that may take 8 or 9 hours or longer.
and these are all level 2. These are kind of the mid-priced or
Well,
chargers, are we?
Level 1 is a 110 outlet. Level 2 is 220. And beyond that is supercharging or DC, direct charge, which some cars cannot handle. Actually, most of them cannot handle. So level 2 charger is median, it's good quality.
And that's what you're recommending to the city?
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
It's
okay.
pretty much a standard.
Okay, okay, very good. And also the amount of electricity, if that car is being charged for an hour, maybe, what is the expense for the electricity for an hour charge?
I don't know off the top of my head. Those were figures we have been putting together to actually, we'll be at the meeting.
Mhm.
Myself and Travis McCullough will be at the meeting on Monday
Good,
night.
good,
We'll have those
good.
answers for you,
Okay.
but I don't have them right
I'd
now.
really like to know that. It had on my spec sheet that the investment from the plant board is $60,000. Is that correct?
I believe that's our estimate. Is that?
Three charging stations at 20 apiece.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. Yes, sir.
And then the city would be in charge of paying for the electricity, is that right?
That's correct. By statute, we cannot give away electricity. And it'd be similar to the situation we have with light fixtures for streets.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
we maintain them and the city pays
That's
for
where
the
we got that nice
electricity.
check from you for 3,000, what was it, 3,800?
You're referring to the rebate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. But going back, Mr. Foster, I really would like to know how much that is going to cost the city. In fact, you know, really, if we want to be fair to all concerned, I think there ought to be a charge that that person, whether they're a visitor or live in Frankfurt, expends, because it's not fair to all concerned if it's free. That's my personal opinion. You know, Joe Blow that lives down the street from me can't afford that electric car. And he can't afford to go up there and plug in his car because it doesn't have the adaptation to do so. He's paying today, at today's prices, $2.59. That charge, in my opinion, ought to be equal to, or even a little greater, because it's a service to those people who can afford electric cars. And I have no grievance against them. I'm just saying they ought to pay the going rate of gasoline per gallon, regular, in order to do that. And I think, and I hope, that these are adaptable to have credit cards or cash transactions with these charging stations. They do? Okay. Very good. Thank you so much.
Is there any other public comment? Kathy Warner?
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for Customer Appreciation Day. It was lots of fun. It was hot out there, and you all worked really hard for it. And I have to tell you, I think this was maybe a little bit better even than last year, if I think back on it. Also, I want to thank the staff on the renewal of the Viacom networks. Anne Marie and I had this frank conversation, and it is true, and I know it's true. Cable as we know it is going, but I love my cable tremendously, and all these surveys or whatever that maybe they don't we don't watch. Well, I have to tell you, my husband and I watch every one of these, and we enjoy all of them. And if they take TV Land off, I don't know what I'll do, because I love Andy Griffin. But again, I just want to thank the staff for all you do. And
Okay.
you all too. And for allowing public speaking.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kathy. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Okay. We'll go ahead on to website customer comments. I believe that we had one comment which has been answered. It was concerning the ACC network, and that's been covered. On to departmental reports. Cable would be our first item.
Good afternoon. The cable report starts on page 65 of your board package. 165, I'm sorry. The first page is the basically the customer penetration numbers for the month of August. We're running behind a little bit on broadband and security for the month. Still looking into that and trying to push more services and things of that nature to catch that back up. The next page of the report is the trouble call. We're down substantially versus this time last year, which is always a good thing. The last two pages of your report are the outages for the month of August. We had 4 outages. One in node 16, which was a blown fuse. One in node 47, that's Moss Lane, Richardson Lane area, which was due to a bad power inserter. We had an outage in node 13, which is Indian Hills area, which was due to another bad power inserter. And the final outage of the month was in node 37, which is Michael Boulevard, Carmel Lane area, and it was a power supply that just finally gave up. While I'm up here, I would like to do just do a brief report on the community Wi-Fi project. I passed a handout out earlier before the meeting started. Mr. Brad, I'll send it to him. Basically, we're trying to get it up and going before Bourbon on the Bank Festival, which we were able to accomplish that. I think we, that Thursday, I guess was September 22nd, we had it up and going. That prior to that week, we were doing a lot of testing and things of that nature. According to the numbers you have in front of you, you can see that we had a pretty good usage during the festival, the 3 days. That all went fine. And then since then, if you look down at the bottom, it has kind of the usage per day. And I apologize for this being small, but I can get it to you electronically as well. We're still kind of, it's a pilot project. We're still going through fine-tuning things, learning some software, learning some hardware, trying to see where we can make adjustments, and just what the usage is going to be, because that's critical for this project to be a success. To make sure that we have enough access points to cover the amount of traffic that's going to be there. So we're still looking at different improvements and other areas to go to. Be happy to answer any questions the board might have concerning the project at this point.
Back on your earlier comment about having fewer problems this month than the previous month.
Oh, the previous year, I'm sorry.
What do you think helped that?
A lot of it was probably, we did a major active upgrade and things of that nature, so we don't have as much system problems which show up as trouble call a lot of times. A lot of times if the system's not running good, you'll have, you might have a street, so that'll generate 2 or 3 trouble calls. And so having a system that's running pretty linear, pretty steady, really cuts down on trouble calls. And we've done a lot of trouble calls in the last year or two, so eventually I think you get to the point where you're in pretty good shape as far as the customer premise and the plant. So I think that has to do with a lot of it. But I'll say that next month it'll be double.
Okay. Well, thank you. Go ahead.
One of the things I had talked to Gary about, because I looked at the coverage area that you have, and
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot I added it. Those last 2 sheets are the covered, approximate covered areas.
Yeah.
That really depends on the radio and the device and things of that nature, so.
Actually, I know it works. I came down Wilkeston with my phone tuned to see what the Wi-Fi, and it came in as I got to Duval Tower, somewhere around in there, so. But the thing, I think, and I may have been daydreaming, Commissioner, and listening to your meeting the other day, but I thought I heard the Frankfurt School District Superintendent talk about internet access to his students. And it seems to me that this area that we have down on Riverview Park is going to be an underutilized, maybe an underutilized is not the one, but targeting the wrong people to be used. So I was wondering if y'all could explore areas around schools, and I'm not saying which school it is, but where kids would hang out after school.
Yeah.
Parks, whatever.
And
that might be one remedy to them having access to Wi-Fi.
Right. Not to cut you off, this is, the FIS project is kind of a different project.
No, I'm not talking about
right.
that.
But we have
We're
some
talking
Wi-Fi in that too.
I know, but
okay.
we're talking about pilot project where free Wi-Fi, granted week, will be offered to the public. And we have a problem with kids taking advantage of the free Wi-Fi in the Frankfurt high schools. This might be a way of at least remedying, because it's probably not the child's fault that they don't have Wi-Fi in their house.
Right.
So we can compensate for that with this somewhere around where they, may hang out.
Okay, that's.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. Media services.
Thank you all. I'm just going to take a second to brag on my crew at Media Services. This month we started the high school game of the week. They incorporated Telestrator this year, some new technology we've got. If anybody hasn't seen it, the level of production that they do, David Columbia, Zach Hubbard, Abby Phillips, Crystal Simpson, it's outstanding, especially at the budget that we do it for. And I think it's something, I don't know if there's any corollary or peers out there that do production like they do And I think it's something the community and the board can be proud of. I'd encourage everybody to check it out if they haven't seen it. It's first-rate work. So it's our first full year of live production, and we're only in week 2. But viewership numbers compared to what used to be Tuesday playbacks are basically tripled. We had a volleyball game this week. Those numbers were blew anything we've done for volleyball out of the water. So we're seeing good results, and I think people are responding to the live content. And I just wanted to say that that crew they put in long days, especially on Fridays. They'll come in at 8 and they won't leave until 10 or 11 that night. So they do good work, and we're proud of what they do down there.
So I have a question. You used one term I wasn't familiar with. Telestrator?
The telestrator
is that a
is
camera,
where they draw
or?
on the screen as the signal is going across the air, so they can have everybody lined up and say this receiver is going to go out here and draw little things on the scene. So that's
just like in football on
right, exactly,
big deal television.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know we had that capability, but
yeah, we just added that this year, so it's kind of fun.
Sounds good.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Customer service.
Good evening, members of the board. The customer service reports are on page 169 to 170 of your board packet. The customer service staff assisted a little over 5,000 phone calls this month, over 1,600 walk-ins, and then processed over 4,400 cashier transactions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cassie. Let's see. Electric department, the electric report.
Good evening. The electric department report starts on page 171. Our SAIDI number for this month, or I should say for the month of August, is 37.15. If you'll look on the pie chart on the next page, our top 3 outages, of course, outage causing incidents were birds, trees, and lightning, with lightning being the one cause for our biggest outage of the month there at Duncan Road Substation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Did the lightning take out any equipment?
Yes. We had lightning get in on a lightning register inside the station. It actually happened at about 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. And so our guys were able to respond to that pretty quickly. In fact, looks like they got them back on in about 41 minutes. So they got them back on pretty quickly.
Aren't lightning arresters supposed to take the lightning and put it to ground? And that didn't happen?
It does. But some of them are very violent. And when they blow, they could cause major issues, especially our big porcelain pipe that we've got.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. SEPA.
Yes, Madam Chair and Board, your SEPA report starts on page 175, and you will notice that we had a good month this month. For the month of July, the report is a couple of months behind, but we ended up with a profit of $77,274 for this month, and so that gives us a calendar year profit of $120,025. So that is very good. We're glad to see that. And then if you check on page 177, you will see the running total of value that SEPA has been to the plant board, which is just a little over $10 million at this point. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
I just had one. The capacity value is consistently the 60,241. So is that always going to be that same figure, basically?
Most always it will be. Right now, the capacity value that we're allotted, if you'll see the first column, it's always the same. So that's the capacity value that we're able to realize under KYMEA. That really is the difference from what we've seen before. We always had some energy value depending on the market and what energy was going for, but we were unable to recognize any capacity value. So on page 175, you will see that starts there in May and progresses. Will progress through.
So that's another advantage of KYMEA.
It certainly is an advantage over the only other way we were able to do our SEPA transactions. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're gonna say something? What I understand with SEPA, though, is that they aren't actually selling that capacity value on the market.
It's avoided, it's the capacity value that they get that they could sell into the market. So they're basically giving us the same capacity if they went out and bought it. It's considered in the portfolio as that amount of hydro if you look at our portfolio.
So where does that revenue come from that actually turns into that credit? If they don't actually sell the capacity credits, how do they actually provide us with that revenue?
I think the way that it's been explained to me is that if they didn't buy the capacity, if they didn't have the capacity for hydro, they would go out and procure other capacity to fill in that gap. So for instance, for ours, 13 kW, 13,000 kW or 13 megawatts, they don't have to go out and get 13 megawatts because that's considered part of their power supply. So they give us the value of the capacity if they had to go out and procure that.
But then I guess since we're significantly over capacity now, that's not really offsetting anything. So then those revenues are actually just coming out of the demand charge. So we're actually paying them and they're paying us back.
Currently, at times we are over capacity charge, but that completely changes in 2022.
Yeah. So in 2022 we might get some value out of it, but right now there's not.
There's no value for SEPA right now? Is that what
for
you're
the
saying?
capacity part, because we're basically paying them in the demand charge and they give it back to us.
Based on our contract with KYMEA, that's the value of the capacity they agreed to in the contract. So that is the value we do receive on our.
Right. But I guess the point I was making is that the revenue that actually provides that, we're paying them, at $444 a megawatt day for demand, and then they're giving us $128 a megawatt day back for the SEPA capacity. But all that revenue is actually coming through that demand charge back to us, since they're not actually offsetting any capacity purchases. And in fact, we just had to sell 60 megawatts of capacity in the April auction, $10 million of capacity for $60,000. So we won't really be able to see any real value from that SEPA capacity until 2022 when we're able to right size the portfolio, right?
Okay.
Okay, on to safety.
There were no vehicle or OSHA recordables in August.
But I have a question. No, I don't.
Okay.
Madam Chair, did we need the KYMEA?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. Yes, thank you. So is there any report on KYMEA, please?
The most progress we can report to the board is the preliminary decision by FERC, Federal Energy Regulation Commission. They ruled almost all in favor on the KYMEA. So if this can be finalized, June should be in the process in next 3 months, should deliver some more saving for all the members. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I have one. I read through the FERC statement and
Correct.
Tom Trauger's interpretation of that. And why, did they give a reason as to why they saw it in our favor?
I guess the simple answer is I think we have a law in our side.
Okay. Well, it's hard to
I'm not
determine
sure.
that reading all the legal.
I think our one good reason is our legal team did a decent job
Okay.
arguing from the commission for our case. Not only just us, like other, not even KYMEA member, but belong to the same group, they also see the benefit. For example, KMPA
Mhm.
also made a significant change. But it's not finalized because Kentucky Utility, LG, they have to file the cost transition plan in near future. So it's not finalized yet.
Okay. So it's in process, but it looks positive.
In current order, we have the most in favor to. almost all in favor to us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we covered safety. Water distribution.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Water distribution report can be found on pages 183 through 185. Water distribution department had 3 main breaks and 0 outages. And just some updates on work on East Main. We're almost complete. Crews are at by the hydrant by K-State, ready to tie in our line to the existing line. Services will have to be switched after that, and the road repairs made. So it shouldn't be but a couple of weeks longer before we're complete with our part of that project. As everyone is aware, if you're not, they changed the bottom part of the road is now, it's been switched over, and the sewer department is working in the center 2 lanes, and traffic is on the outer 2 lanes. And so they will be there. They're hoping to be done until by December, but the sewer contractor will be there for several more months working on that project. They're going to Glens Creek Road is where they're stopping. And then after that becomes the gas companies coming in. So hopefully I don't think the gas has a lot of work to do in East Main, mostly in Arlington. So, and then the water fountain at Fort Hill is on Bruce's, our service department crew is the one that's been putting those in. The one in Fort Hill is on his schedule for next week. So he's planning on trying to work on that one next week. And Dolly Graham, we're hoping as soon as we hear something from Parks and Rec, from Sean, that we'll be working on that one. Because right now he couldn't find us a clear space, so we're hoping on that one. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Yes, the drinking fountain at Fort Hill goes up near the historic building, and I think there's a picnic shelter area.
Yes, ma'am. It'll be between the parking area and the picnic shelter. There's a little grass area there just on the other side of the split rail fence. There's a split rail fence and then about a 10-foot wide grass area before you get to the pavilion. And so it'll be in that little area because we were informed that that's kind of a gathering place for all the groups for any outings in the park itself. So, and it'd be right there next to the parking area. So,
Sounds good.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Okay, water treatment plant. This should be an interesting presentation.
Good evening, board. I'll do my August report, and then we'll talk a little bit about our current situation. So the August report indicates that the water treatment plant treated 287.7 million gallons of water. We're trending up. That was 9.28 million gallons of water a day for the month. What we did start noticing is the flow at Lock 4 has dropped off in August down to 940 cubic feet per second, or 640 million gallons a day. So if you remember at the beginning of 2019, we kept talking about billions of gallons of water moving past Lock and Dam number 4. Now we're down to millions of gallons. So that number has dropped considerably just through calendar year 2019. We recorded 2.85 inches of rain. It was the second month in a row of below normal rainfall. The summer is definitely warmer. August was trending warmer and drier than normal. So we'll talk a little bit about what happened starting towards the end of August. Ms. Rosen mentioned the historical heat that we've been having. It's been reported on local radio stations, excuse me, that our normal number of days above 90 degrees in this area is 19 a year. We are up to 48, and if we hit 90 today, it'll be 49, above 90 degree days in 2019. We started out 2019 with a lot of rain. We thought, oh no, here we go again, another 2018, 2017. Well, the spigot was turned off at the start of July. We have seen 21 days now, consecutive days of no rainfall in this area. And this is being repeated in the southeast part of Kentucky, which is our watershed for the Kentucky River. So towns like Hazard, Jackson, Boonville, those are towns that I look at when I'm trying to track flow, and all of those are below normal in rainfall as well. Because of the lack of rain and the high temperatures, we are pumping the water right now. Through yesterday, we're averaging 10.4. We're running 19 to 20 hours a day. We normally run 16, so my guys are working overtime. And everybody else has shouted out to their staff. I want to shout out to my frontline operators. I've got 4 young men that are working very hard and very diligently. They're coming in at 4 in the morning. They're working till midnight or 1 in the morning. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be having water in our county and some of the surrounding areas. The drought monitor came out last week. The drought monitor is published every Thursday, and it tracks things like temperature, precipitation, soil moisture, stream flow, and then we'll categorize different areas based on that data. And we went for months in 2019, and there was no color on the state of Kentucky. We were white. There was no indication of drought. The last couple of months, we've started seeing some yellow creep in, primarily in southeast Kentucky. And yellow was just, oh, we're getting a little dry. Last month, they moved southeast Kentucky into a moderate drought status. And so it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens this Thursday. All of these conditions, the lack of rainfall, the high temperature, the drought status for southeast Kentucky, has resulted in some very low flow in the Kentucky River. Keep in mind the Kentucky River is a series of 14 dams. And as the water slows down between the 2 dams, we basically start creating big pools of water that just sit there. The water flow right now is 213 CFS, which is 138 million gallons of water a day passing our intake. So it has dropped considerably. We are taking almost 10% of that flow. Everybody likes to look at the river, you river rats, Miss Lindsay, and will comment on how pretty and green the river is, and they like it when it's low. That pretty green will give us more grief at the water treatment plant than if we had a high muddy river, because that's an indication that that flow is getting low and that the pool is starting to basically stagnate. It stops flowing or slows down, and you get a lot of different organisms that start producing tastes and odors, and that's exactly what's going on. We have got some organisms in the river that produce a musty, earthy type of odor that is a challenge, and is a challenge right now to just about everybody on the river. Everybody that I have talked to is fighting this river right now. We are, I said it the other day, we're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it. We've got the chemicals that absorb the odors. We've got chemicals that will kill the organisms and remove them. We have optimized everything we can. We are just looking at some extraordinary flow conditions right now. I tell everybody I see, pray for rain. Do a rain dance, do something. That's what's going to save us. We need rainfall. Right now, not necessarily here, but upstream in our watershed. So yes, the water does have a little bit of an earthy, musty taste to it. You may notice that it comes and goes. And that's just conditions in the river. Some days it's better, some days it's worse. But believe me, I've got a staff of 9 back there at the water treatment plant, and we go hard at it all day long, trying to keep it under control. One of the things that I would like to mention is because of the low flow conditions, we are closely tracking whether or not we will be triggered into implementing our drought response plan. And I will be having a conversation tomorrow with the Kentucky Division of Water to see what their intent is as to whether or not they're going to be issuing any water advisories or water watches. And we will just have to move from there. So I'll try to answer any questions.
Yes, I have a question. You mentioned the meeting on Thursday. Is that the water advisory that you just mentioned?
What comes out on Thursday is the drought monitor. It's
Oh.
put out by, oh gosh, I just blanked. It's
Mm.
not the National Weather Service, but there's a group that puts that out every Thursday.
I see, okay. Well, having experienced severe drought in Texas, the first step, and maybe it fits into the water watch thing you're talking about, is to go to voluntary recommendations for water restrictions, like watering outside on your lawn only 2 days a week and only, early in the morning or late in the evening, things like that.
And that's all built into our water
Okay,
shortage
so you
response.
have it.
It's a 5-staged, I believe, David, isn't it? A 5-staged approach, and
Mhm.
it's all dependent upon flow in the river, what type of advisories are put out by the regulating agencies,
Okay.
what the weather's going to do. But it's a progression, and it starts out just like that.
Okay, with suggested optional.
That's actually a plan that this board approved back in 2007, and it was updated in 2012, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of the plan.
Okay. Thank you, David. That'd be a good idea. I'd be interested in knowing what that is. I don't know that there is any rain in the forecast. I think the prediction is like 10% per day, and
I think they're saying maybe some on Sunday, Monday, but it won't be enough.
right. Yep. That's serious. I know I had questions from some people about couldn't the Dix Dam just release a little more water, but they are using that for generation, so that's a conflict. And from what you said downriver, it's not that much better in terms of flow.
No, it's not.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, on to action items. Consider approval of the Viacom. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote too much on my paper here. Yes, network operations. Darren.
I like following Julie because pretty much anything I say has got to be better news than what she had, right? So you have the NOx summary there in your packet. I included just the normal calls by, the different outages, line down, no water, the calls by subject, I guess. Under that, though, it's hard to see unless you're looking at it electronically. I know it's a lot of busy information, but we've mentioned it before, as requested before. I included calls by type, by hours of day, so it just gives you an idea of what type of calls we have at certain times of day. Obviously, early in the morning and later in the evening when people get home, we see a little spike, and like any other time, the spike is always usually probably cable or internet, sometimes water, and then electric behind that, but it just gives it to you by time of day. In August, our staff handled a total of 2,883 phone calls, and for the locates in August, we did 631, so year-to-date, the locate staff has done 4,602 locates across our 3 lines of service, locating all 3. That's a total of 13,806 for the year. So they've still been pretty busy through the warm months. Next month, I think you'll see our call volume go up quite a bit just because of the low water and the stagnant water. We're getting, the last few days, average maybe 50, 60 calls a day that we're fielding, just the basic questions, why does my water have the taste or the odor? And we just kind of give a scripted statement. We try to educate and assure them that it's fine, it's safe to drink, and just to reiterate the things that Julie mentioned, just to reassure the customer. So we've been handling some of those here in the last few days, week or so, and obviously I probably don't really see an end to it until something changes, till we get some significant rain.
Yeah.
As far as the summary, that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Okay. I was just thinking a little bit more about the water shortage plan for Frankfurt by the Electric Plant Board. I'm sorry, the Electric and Water Plant Board. that maybe this would be a good idea to put it on our document page on our website in case people are interested in what does happen if the water situation gets worse. So that we'd already have it there, and that would be something that possibly could reference people to if they want to know more about what happens
Sure.
if the drought continues.
Okay.
So, that's good.
Thank you.
And, I had one question on locating the electric, water, and cable services. Do we send one person that locates all three of them?
Yes.
Okay.
We have 2 locators, and usually they split the tickets. We'll get tickets real early in the early morning hours unless it's an emergency locate. And they can do, some days they'll do 50, some days they'll do more than 100 between those 2 guys. So they're staying pretty busy. And it's everything from a property owner maybe putting a fence across their yard to a large construction project like East Main, or maybe a gas line repair where they're going to the neighborhood multiple times as they progress through the subdivision. But yes, it is. And their time on scene really is pretty short if they're doing, between 2 of them, 100 or more a day. So they stay pretty busy.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On there. Okay. Item 8.1, consider approval of the Viacom network renewal. Harvey Couch to cover that for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The Cable Advisory Committee recommends approval of the renewal of the Viacom Networks agreement. Just to give you a little bit of history, back in 2014, FPB executed a renewal for the Viacom networks. There are 19 networks covered by that agreement, including Nickelodeon, TV Land, Paramount, Comedy Central, CMT, MTV, VH1, and BET on classic cable. Teen Nick, Nick Jr., Nicktoons, MTV2, CMT Music, MTV Classic, BET Soul, and Nick Music on preferred cable, and MTV Live on HD+. In that 2014 agreement, over the term, the programming fees increased by nearly 100% on those networks across the board. Those increases were a major driver in our classic cable rate increases during that term. At the same time, the ratings fell significantly for 18 of the 19 Viacom networks. Which leads us to the 2019 renewal proposed by Viacom, which includes an initial reduction in rates. In 2020 and 2021, the fees would drop by 11% each year, and then the 3 years following, fees would start increasing again, approximately 6% annually. By the 5th year, the rates would be back nearly to where they are today. In the 1920 budget, those proposed decreases were included. So that's built into, we expected that. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys might have on this item.
Okay. I guess we're showing our age when you said the 1920 budget. I know you mean the 2020.
You're right. I do mean the 2021. Yes.
Well, I'll see more clearly then,
Right.
certainly. But yeah, I think I'm satisfied. Any other questions? Okay. So do we have a motion to agree to approve the agreement for the 5-year term?
I'll make a motion to approve the 5-year term for the Viacom network renewal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion, or we'll go ahead and vote? All in favor of the Viacom motion?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. And 8.2, consider approving NBA TV amendment. Harvey, again, to lead us through that.
Thank you. Staff recommends approval of the NBA TV amendment. This amendment extends our current direct agreement to a term through September 30th of 2024. There is no major rate reset. Annual increases are below budgeted parameters. NBA TV is on preferred cable, channel 150, and HD on 650. We've got live NBA, WNBA, and Euro regular season and playoff games. No additional carriage requirements or obligations are included in this agreement, and staff attorney has reviewed the agreement and it meets with his approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Okay.
I'll move we approve the NBA TV amendment.
And
Second.
okay, we motion and second. All those in favor, unless there's any discussion of approving?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And 8.6, consider MaxWell EAP to provide employee assistance program services.
Are we
Diane?
going out of order?
Oops, did I do that again?
8.3.
Oh, I turned to pages. Okay, thank you. 8.3, consider accepting minutes from the Cable Advisory Committee meeting on August 6th, 2019.
Those are there for your review. These are not draft minutes. The committee approved these at their meeting last week. And if I could, too, just while I have a minute, I want to thank Mr. John Paul, who served 6 years on the Cable Advisory Committee, whose term is coming to an end. And we will be advertising the opening of that position starting this weekend. So if anybody's interested, please reach out.
So do we advertise that on our website?
Yeah, on our website, there'll be advertisements in the newspaper, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on Cable 10, and we use all the outlets that we can to try to generate interest.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, 8.4, consider
So
approval.
don't we need to accept the minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, do we have a motion to accept the Cable Advisory Committee minutes?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the Cable Advisory Committee minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay. 8.4, consider approval of FPB's General Manager Gary Zheng to submit a formal claim to FPB's insurance carrier under its directors and officers liability policy. I had some discussions with James concerning this, and we realized that what we actually need to do is first pass a motion to, with regard to the indemnity clause in the KRS, and actually pay this bill from the attorneys before we can submit a claim to the insurance company, because what they're looking for is, do you have an expense that you need to have covered that you've paid? And so I have a motion to make that happen before this other motion to submit the claim to the insurance company. So is there any discussion on that?
Was there a second?
I didn't actually make
Okay.
the motion, I was just explaining it, so
Sorry.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move to direct FPB to indemnify its directors for expenses incurred in the performance of their official duties per KRS 96.173, which states compensation and expenses and any and all liabilities of whatever kind or character incurred by the board or any officer of the employee thereof shall be payable solely and only out of the revenues obtained by that board. I thereby move to direct FPB to pay the invoice received from Strobel Barkley PLLC per stated indemnification and submit a claim to our D&O insurance provider for reimbursement. So that is the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, I do have a question. When this issue came to my attention anyway, a couple of months ago, I'd asked staff to look at a copy of the insurance policy. The insurance policy. So I looked at the January 18th copy in the agenda, in the booklet that was presented to the board that they made their action on. And in there was an exception clause to the indemnification. Now, granted, I'm for all of what we're doing right here. I mean, paying it and all that. But I have questions I need to answer before I can vote one way or the other on these things. When I looked at the January 2018 meeting book and looked at the agenda item was the insurance policy. The insurance policy was in the folder. So the policy that the members voted on in the book had an exception for the city of Frankfurt as it relates to who we were could be, I guess, sued by whatever. So I asked Hans about get a current copy of it, and it did not have it. But what I don't understand is how did the insurance policy that was voted on January 2018 had it in it, and February 5th of 2018, the policy that was went out, it was missing. So my question is, who took it out? When did they take it out? And why did they take it out?
Okay, well, I haven't looked at this lately. My memory is not absolutely crystal clear, but I had noted that that exception was there and talked to the insurance company about that, knowing that we were in a semi-perilous situation with the city with a certain amount of friction, and feeling that if there was anyone to cause us as board members difficulties, it would be the city. And so I talked to the insurance company about why was that there and should it be there, and they removed it.
Okay, my point is that the official action by the board, they acted officially on it in. Now granted, I'd rather it be out, so I'm not questioning, I'm for it being out. But I have an issue with nobody on this board appears to have known that the policy that was voted on in that meeting had been altered subsequent to that day.
I'm sure there was an email that went out. Seems like it was, I don't remember, my memory's not perfect either, but I think there was a discussion with the insurance guy in the meeting, and that came up, and he said he would check on it, and then he sent an email.
No, that did not happen.
I have no idea.
Because I went back
Just whatever from memory.
because my memory is not that good either. And I went back
But there was a letter from the insurance guy or something that said he took it out.
That was in February.
Okay.
I went back and looked at on YouTube, the January 2018 meeting, and Anna Marie asked some questions about cars that were insured. I asked some questions about flood insurance, and there was no mention of any change in policy coverage in that meeting.
The cars and the flood insurance wouldn't have been for the board insurance.
But it was all at the same time.
Oh.
And so there was no discussion of anything having to do with any change in policy for the board coverage.
So I understand why it was changed because you said that. Now I'm trying to figure out who changed it.
Well, the insurance company changed it.
Well, no, at whose request, at whose direction did the insurance change a policy that had been voted on, that the board had voted on a different policy?
Well, I definitely raised the question, and I'm not certain if I raised it at the January meeting or the December meeting before that.
So when did any of us find out that the policy had been changed?
Well, that would go back to the email that was received from the insurance company.
But this was not shared with the board when the February 1 letter that's addressed to you and courtesy copied to Mr. Liebman and others, it states before the board meeting of the February 16th, you expressed your concern over the director's liability coverage, and so he said that he was able to have that removed from the claim. You know, this wasn't brought to the board's attention in February or any time since then. It was only brought to my attention anyway when Steve asked the question, and so we found out, for me, I found out today. You know, for me personally, I agree with Steve. You know, I came into this meeting from what was in the board packet expecting to vote for this because I think that board members should have their legal expenses covered, because I think it would have a chilling effect on future board members coming onto this board if they thought that their legal expenses were not going to be covered. But I don't see where a single board member has the authority to ask insurance to do anything. It becomes, again, a matter of policy and procedure that, you know, it should have been brought before the board to direct James to contact the insurance company to ask for that exclusion to be removed. So the board should have voted on it then, at least in February when we, or at least notified in February when it had been changed. You know, what we voted on in January had the exclusion. And so, and to me, it'd be, you know, I was on the ethics board for the city for 6 years, 3 of which I was the chairperson. And our own ethics policy states that when anything benefits an individual, that individual should not be participating in it. And, you know, the meeting was on the 16th on the, according to the bill that you're asking us to approve. I think you all got in touch with Strobo Barkley. They contacted the city on the 26th. So, you know, you're asking the insurance company to remove that exclusion directly benefited you and Walt. And for me, I have a problem with that ethically.
Okay. A couple things there. First, we have the one email, but we don't know that the email wasn't then forwarded to the entire board.
Well, I went back through my email and it's
Okay.
not there.
And the other thing, it could have been shared verbally. The other thing is that it doesn't improve something for Walt and I. This is protection for board members is what we're talking about. And this money is no way benefits Walt and I. This is a claim for a service by
Well,
an
I get
attorney.
that, Maria, and I, it's just, when you look at the date, the timeline, January 16th, you approved a policy that had the exclusion in it. January 25th somewhere, the first charge is coming from the attorney. February 5th is when the new policy starts. February 1st is when receive an email that says it's been taken out. It's so close that the appearance anyway is you know.
It does seem all this is about appearance. I mean, it seems pretty disingenuous to come to the board and start asking questions of other members that you have documentation to define that answer.
We didn't ask why.
You asked me. You asked us
who?
both. You asked the
No,
board.
I asked who?
You asked the board when this happened, how this happened, and
No,
who
I didn't
asked.
ask when. I
Well,
said
one of you did.
who did it,
and you've
and
got a
why.
letter, and you've got a
I said,
letter
no,
that's
my
you've got a letter right here
question
that
was,
says.
you got the wrong W. I used who and why. I didn't ask when. I knew when.
Which you already knew.
No, I knew when. Still don't know why and who, because no one's told me who
It says right
changed.
there. You expressed a concern with the extension.
That doesn't mean she changed it. It just says that she expressed it. I'm asking
Right.
who
And then
changed it.
Charlie did.
No, who from the board directed the insurance company to change it?
I mean, from my reading of this email, nobody did. She asked Charlie. Charlie said we can do that. There's no cost, and Charlie changed it.
I'm sure insurance companies change things at their own discretion.
Well, insurance company representatives do.
It just seems like you're trying to make something out of nothing.
All I'm doing is I'm looking at those timelines and I'm just saying, who changed it? I mean, the insurance policy that was voted on at the January meeting had the clause in it, and the policy comes out February the 5th, it's not in it. In between that time, a correspondence has come back and said that it's been requested out, and we have taken it out. So someone had to ask for it to come out.
Well, I did, and I admitted that. I went and talked to
He says
him.
right in the thing.
So
you had a conversation in the January.
you asked for it to come out.
Well, I asked why was it there?
I said, why was it there?
But
And he
did
said
you
it
ask
came
for it
out.
to come out?
Yes, I did.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah. And again, I mentioned it doesn't benefit Walt or I. It benefits all
Well, it
board
benefits the whole
members.
board.
All board members. that
I mean, we could
they
just
know.
likely be sued for Tanglewood or any other issue by the city. And if there's no cost to it, why would we not have broader indemnification?
Again, I totally agree with you. I like the policy's better for me, I agree.
Yeah.
But I can't go with how we got there. That's my problem, is how we got to the better policy.
Well, there could have
This
been,
is not about whether the policy is good or whether you are eligible for the money. This is about how we got to where you are eligible to get it.
And I also think there's a procurement issue here also, in that normally, procedurally, you would have had this vote before an attorney was hired. So the board would have approved an attorney being hired for the defense of the board prior to receiving a bill for it. Because, you know, you're asking us to approve a bill after the fact. And with anything else that the plant board does, before money can be spent, it has to be approved. And so, again, to me, it's a procedural issue that, at least in the future, we need to have policy that says before the board expects
There is
to
policy, there's
be.
the KRS that says the board is indemnified. Period.
We're talking, well, then there was no need to change or alter the policy
well, yes,
from
there
the
is.
January meeting.
Well, there's a difference between being indemnified and having insurance coverage to back up that indemnification, right?
If there's no need, I don't see how officially you can change something that had an official action by the board, and then that document goes forth and it's changed. I don't know how, that's like 1 and 1 equals 3.
I mean, I see the general manager, I see the board attorney, I see several folks copying
None of the
this,
board,
and everybody was comfortable with that
no
process.
other
Nobody
board
rose
member
any
was
objections.
privy to the change until this issue comes up now. This is a year and a half almost since then, and we just finding out about this. I mean,
It just seems odd to me you're complaining about us having better insurance coverage.
no, I'm complaining about the process of getting to better. I'm always for better, but I want to get there the right way. I don't want to get there in a way that looks questionable.
Okay. Well, I think we've had discussion. We have a motion and a second. Jeff, is there anything that you might not have heard well, or any questions you might have before we have a vote?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. Do you think, James, do you recommend we call this by board member?
Yes.
Okay. Kathy, please call for the vote.
Member Bradshaw?
I vote yes.
Member Mason?
No.
Member Hale?
This vote really pains me because I want to vote yes, because I think board members should be covered when legal action is taken against them. But I also feel that policy and procedure is important. And I think that ethics are important. And because of that, I vote no.
Member Baldwin?
Yes.
Member Rosen?
Yes.
Passed 3-2.
Okay, the motion has passed. Strobel Barkley will be paid, and the letter submitted to the insurance company for coverage of that claim. Okay, we'll now go on to item 8.5, consider approval of bid invitation 1683 annual price contract for ductile iron pipe, valves, hydrants, ductile iron fittings, and tapping sleeves to Core and Main and Ferguson Waterworks. Jennifer to help us through this.
Good evening. Most of FPB's ductile iron pipe, valves, hydrants, fittings, and tapping sleeves are purchased from an annual price contract. The material is kept in inventory. It needs to be replenished periodically. Orders for this material depend on new development, maintenance, and repairs of old materials. And vendors bid with the understanding they are locking in unit pricing, not a quantity that we will purchase. The bid is divided into those 5 categories: the pipe, valves, hydrants, fittings, and tapping sleeves. The bid also states that each of those 5 categories will be awarded on an all or none basis. This year's bid, we also included alternate pricing for materials that meet the Buy America and Buy American requirements. These are items needed from time to time for certain grant-funded projects. However, the bid stated that the award would be heavily weighted on the price of the material that does not meet the requirements, because we use most of that. We sent the bid invitation to 6 vendors. We received 4 responses. After evaluating all bids, it's recommended awarding the pipe and fittings to Core and Main. They were the low bidder meeting specifications. And the valves, hydrants, and tapping sleeves to Ferguson Waterworks. They were the low bidder for those. The pipe prices were down 1.53%. Fittings were up 28.61%. Valves were up 5.21%. Hydrants were up 3.57%. Tapping sleeves were up 5.10%. And as of September 6th, we have purchased approximately $162,823 from the previous contract. And all of the tab sheets for both types of pricing are on page 209 to 223. And if you have any questions, me or David can answer those.
It's amazing that one item, the price actually went down.
The pipe.
Yep. But
Yeah.
maybe they just
Down just a little bit.
brought their pricing in alignment with competitors or something. Okay. So do we have a motion for this?
I'll move we approve bid invitation 1683, the annual price contract for ductile iron pipe, valves, hydrants, ductile iron fittings, and tapping sleeves to Core and Main and Ferguson Waterworks.
And a second? We have a motion and second. All in favor of purchasing, or of this purchase order? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you both. Okay, so now item 8.6, Diane, to cover consider MaxWell EAP to provide employee assistance program services.
Good afternoon. Staff asked Cheryl Morgan to solicit proposals from companies to provide employee assistance program services for next year. We received responses from 2 of 15 companies that were contacted. We recommend the board approve MaxWell EAP as the new provider starting January 1st. MaxWell offers 5 confidential counseling sessions each year to employees and dependents through a network of 8 local counselors. Employees or dependents can contact MaxWell direct to schedule appointments. At intake, trained counselors provide in-the-moment telephone support, referral to a local in-network affiliate counselor, or will arrange structured telephonic counseling services. The fees are $39.60 annually, $3,960 annually, and the funds are in the 2019-2020 budget for the service. MaxWell reports that 85% of cases reach problem resolution without the necessity of a referral beyond the EAP. If a referral is needed, they will use our current health insurance provider network to refer employees or dependents elsewhere. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
I had a question and a couple, and I apologize for not getting them to you sooner. So if you don't have the answers, you can just send it to me.
Okay.
I was just curious as to how many employees used EAP services last year.
The last time I checked, and this has been pretty regularly, it's 5 or 6 per quarter. They will invoice us quarterly and send us a report that just gives the number. And it's not necessarily employees, that would include dependents possibly that contacted them.
And then how many are self-referred and how many are FPB referred?
99.9% are self-referred. We will recommend or make employees aware that we have those services, but they can voluntarily contact them.
Okay. And was the cost last year about the same as what it was this year?
Our current provider, it's I think it's just under, it's like $2,650 annually. So this is a little bit of an increase, but they have more options as far as the number of providers that employees will be able to go to.
Thanks.
Okay. If there are no other questions, do we have a motion to adopt this insurance or this MaxWell EAP provider?
Sure, I'll move that we select MaxWell EAP to provide employee assistance program services.
A second.
Okay, a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Diane. Okay. So, item 8.7, consider approval of the bid for energy efficiency.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff publicly advertised invitation 1684 for home energy audits and sent it directly to 2 vendors. 1 response was received. After reviewing the response, staff recommends awarding to Weatherization Plus LLC, contingent upon a final contract that excludes the contractor from providing home improvement services to customers who participate in the audits provided by FPB. Audits will be $450 per home for home up to 4,000 square feet and $525 for houses over 4,000 square feet. Audits will include a visit to the customer's house. There'll be a visual inspection of the main energy features, and diagnostic testing will be performed to evaluate primarily how well sealed the house is. Following the audit, a written report will be provided to the customer highlighting potential areas of improvement for their consideration. The current budget has $50,000 included for energy efficiency programs. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple of suggestions. I'd like to amend it, but it's obviously up to the board. One, I'd like to see the money that the city services drawn in some kind of geographic sectors, maybe it's 5 or 6, and allocate the money equally among the sectors to get all neighborhoods the opportunity to get this money, knowing that, when you look at the statistics, the demographics, sometimes more educated people will take advantage of something that they suck up. How many did you say was going to be?
We think it'll be about 110, assuming there aren't a lot of people.
How many customers?
We have 20,000 total, so 18,000
So
maybe.
100 out of 18,000. I don't want to see them all get sucked up by one neighborhood or 2 neighborhoods. I would recommend that the planning board draw up some geographic boundaries, allocate them equally to them, and after 6 months, that if some sector has not used their amount, then that comes back into a pool for anyone else to use. All I'm trying to do is to sort of level the playing field just a while so someone can get it. My second thought, what I'd like to add to it is that no planning board director nor upper management in the Frankfurt Planning Board be eligible for one of these audits. I know it's not true.
Okay. Well, I think those are good points, Steve. One thing that has always been part of this program is that it's residential only, it's not businesses, and that it's, the person needs to be the owner of the home.
Exactly. But there are owners of homes that may not have access to internet, as we talked about earlier, to see online or read the State Journal, read some other publications that where this might be. So all I'm doing is saying, let's do some divisions of it for maybe 4 or 5 months. After that, it comes free to anyone that has the reason.
How do you envision dividing the city up?
I'm leaving it to the staff to do that. That's their role.
I'd suggest that if the board sees fit to award the bid, then there'd be a separate motion as to how it's implemented, how the program is administered.
Does staff have any thoughts on how those geographic separations would be made, or any impact on the program from?
We had some discussing about that. We certainly can do is, for the future board meeting, we have the detailed plan, then the board can approve it. It is the first time we tried, so we want to make sure it can be effective, and at the same time, we don't want to create a lot of new manual work potentially. So how to divide the city by suggestion, like Mr. Mason talked about 5 to 6 different areas. We don't have exactly, plan to do right now, but we can have one for the future board meeting if you like to say.
I mean, since this is a pilot, Steve, I mean, and not wanting to create a lot of work for the staff that, might be better handled later in the process. I mean, what do you think about, I mean, this is a pilot, assuming if people get hold of these 100, we'd actually have some sense of where that came from after those 100, and then could think about targeting those areas that are underused and be more specific about it later.
I think you're going to get a distorted result because you're going to have a success rate that's going to come from areas that would deem to be into those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And the irony is that those are the ones that probably need it the less. And that's why I said, I'm not saying absolute. This can be divided. I mean, they have a plot of where everyone that has electricity is. They can do, it could be a simple division of the property. After 5 months, if it's not being used, certainly they will have built up a waiting list. If there is a people who want it, that have utilized all in their sector, that can, this underutilized sector comes back to the middle and can be used by everyone. I'm only saying hold it for 5-6 months by sector. The sector can be identified neighborhoods, if you will.
Census district.
You got U.S. Census tracts. The city or the county planning department can give it to you tomorrow.
Well, a couple things I thought of is we have 2 billing cycles, so half could go to each billing cycle. And as far as notifying people of it, we could put a message on their electric bill.
I understand it, but again, you got to realize some people who can't pay their bills don't even look at their bill. They just kind of and have to pay it. They don't go to that detail because it's too painful.
Well, I guess.
I mean, seriously,
Well,
some people do not look to the detail that you are.
There's one other point there, which is that this is not like House Smart. This is just a program to help them understand what they could do for energy efficiency. They still have to use the financial tools that they have to implement anything.
I understand that. I'm not talking about how smart. I was saying statistically, when you look at studies, education tends to move toward more awareness, more taking advantage of things. That's not intelligence, that's education. So all I'm saying is give people who do not utilize the internet, maybe occasionally read the paper, may look at their bill 2 times out of 3 months, give them added time to do it. If they don't use it, it's still available for the people who looked at it the first day. I'm going to sign up for it. So I just don't want it to be all sucked up by, people of a certain income, people of a certain education level, and then 5 months down the road, someone of a certain income and a certain education level, oh, I didn't know about that. I could use that. So all I'm doing, it's kind of a compromise, really, in what I'm saying.
Well, I guess my thought, I mean, I definitely agree with board members and senior management. I think that's a good exemption. I agree with that modification to the motion. I think that's fine. But, you know, I'm sensitive to the extra workload for the staff. This is the first round of it. You know, we'll have some good data after
How many
those.
hours do you think it'll take to figure out a division of the
After
city?
those first, 100, we'll have some sense of that. So, if it looks like we need to target it more after, I think that we can look at that for the next round of allocation. So, I would agree to this, to the preclusion for board and staff, but I think we're good to go with what we've got now for the 100.
All I'm saying is, how many hours would it take for the staff to come up with that division? And it would be hours, but I'm not going to belabor the point.
So, we've had discussion. Do we want to go with a motion and a vote at this point? So is there a motion?
Mine doesn't have the. Sure. How about a move that we award bid invitation 1684 for home energy audits to Weatherization Plus LLC for $450 per audit, with Mr. Mason's stated exclusion of senior management staff and board members from taking advantage of the program.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Could we make sure that we also might mention that contingent upon a final contract?
Right,
that
and contingent on the
excludes
final contract with
providing
with
home improvement service.
Thank you for that, Ben. Okay, so we have a motion, abridged slightly, and a second. Any further discussion? Or we're ready to vote? Okay. Kathy, please call this one individually.
I think it's unanimous.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well then,
Voice vote be fine.
okay, good. All in favor of going ahead with this program? Or the motion? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Next item, informational item, general manager's comments. Gary, do you have anything?
We have some way to show some information about our
Appreciation?
Right, appreciation and all that. But since we are in the meeting, we cannot play. We can play that after we close the meeting.
Okay.
I just thought I'd just say a few things.
Yes.
Sure, that sounds good. Kathy, thank you.
We'll save the rest for, well, again, I'll give you a plug for Facebook, social media. If you're not on it, get on it, follow us. We post all the stuff on there. We also have the Cable 10's Frankfurt Minute every day, and then around 10 on Wednesdays. I encourage you to watch it. Kathy says it's good. Ringing endorsement. But I want to say thank you. We had a great day Friday. I particularly want to single out Leanne Phillips and her team, support services. Leanne, Jennifer Hellard, Jeremy Richardson, Jeremy Thompson, William Lynn. They worked really hard to get everything planned, logistics. I don't do well at logistics, and they're on it. So they got everything planned, set up. So I wanted to thank them for all of their hard work. And then for Tim Kubert for grilling 640 hot dogs. And we ran out right at the end. Very successful. We served, I think, twice as many hot dogs this year as we did last. And we had some great feedback from customers that were here. Not only did we have, we partnered with Passport Radio. They promoted us all week on the radio, and then they were here and they broadcast live from the event. And then we had live cut-ins, where we talked about our services and things that were going on. We had tents for each department with people there to answer questions, and we had our giveaways. The cable department had a really cool wheel that we made up that people could spin, and they could win something. Like we gave away coupons for free video on demand movies, or if you got really lucky, you could get Showtime free for 3 months. Other promotional things. I can't remember the other ones now. I just talked about them all the time. But this was to encourage people to try some of our services, and hopefully they'll like them so much they'll want to keep them and then pay for them. So our water department was there with, we had water bottles. They had the toilet tabs. We had information about how much money you can save by being aware of leaks in your toilets. We talked about the water. We had people that had questions about what's going on with our water. We answered those. The electric department was there with the light board and our LED light bulbs, talking about how much how much energy and money you can save using LED light bulbs, and in contrast with the CFLs, and I think they had halogens in there. And then we again we had the hot dogs and chips and cookies and drinks, and then we also had some prizes that were donated by some of our networks. Access TV donated an Epiphone guitar signed by Charlie Daniels. Food Network donated a portable grill and apron, and ESPN had a gift package for us, which was like a gym bag, t-shirt, hat, koozie, Bluetooth speaker. So we had a lot of people sign up for those, and we had the drawing that afternoon, and everybody's come and pick up their prizes already, and they were all very thrilled to be winners. So again, it was just a great day. We got a lot of good feedback from our customers, and again, we continually talked about how we do appreciate our customers as a municipal utility. We're customer owned, and we just wanted to celebrate our customers and just show them that we're here because of them. So it was a great day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the update, Kathy.
Sure.
Sounds good. Okay, so the next item is new and old business. Do we have anything to cover here?
I have one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
The importance of transparency in the process of KYMEA in the years going forward cannot be understated. FPB is now locked into a multiple decade commitment to the agency, and it's imperative.
Oh, turn on your speaker.
Oh, sorry. Start again. The importance of transparency in the processes of KYMEA in the years going forward cannot be understated. FPB is now locked into a multiple decade commitment to the agency, and it's imperative that as a majority stakeholder, FPB imparts the ideals of transparency and best practices on KYMEA, so that organization will become more responsive to its members and to its members' ratepayers. I move that we direct staff to lobby to implement several directives before KYMEA board in its next meeting to pursue the directives in the future and to pursue these directives in the future until successful. Those items include KYMEA will post all regular, special, and committee meeting notices with reasonable descriptions of actions being taken and discussion items online and prior to the meeting date, so that the public is aware of the business taking place in the meetings. KYMEA will video record all regular, special, and committee meetings, which are subject to the open meeting laws, and will provide public access to those recordings online. And additionally, I'd like to move that staff continues recording the meetings that we do now, and additionally post those publicly available on our website.
What was the first motion part? The first motion you made?
It's all basically the same thing. Basically, the KYMEA posts all their minutes for their committee meetings, their special meetings, and their agendas online, available early for everybody to see. And then they videotape their meetings and have those made available as well. And then the third part of that was staff continues to record them, and then past and future ones get posted on our website.
Just a question.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's James's question. This is going to be our representative is going to make that motion for us. Do they have to display their agenda prior to a 24-hour notice? How can we, as a board, make them do it? I mean, because I'm assuming you say prior, you're thinking more than one day.
I'm thinking as much as practical. So at least within the time frame that's allowed. But if earlier, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But don't they already do that?
Not for the committee meetings and special meetings and such. They do for some of the regular meetings, and but then there's also a lot, other ones we can't really affect are a lot of the less than quorum meetings that meet in the committee discussions.
But anytime they meet, they aren't required to put for public notice.
They are required, yeah.
But they don't.
Okay.
And right now, the taping that does go on is done by our staff. I feel that
And their conference room has a similar video set
I
up
think,
as ours
I think
does.
Jeff is having a hard time hearing you.
I couldn't hear that last
I'm
comment.
sorry, Jeff.
Madam Chair.
I was just saying that KYMEA meetings are now taped by our staff, by the FPB staff, and this motion talks about that KYMEA should be taking the initiative to do this and to share this information, that there are many things coming up with KYMEA, that we are 54% of their load, which means we're 54% of the spending, and that the public needs to easily be able to find this information. And I find it difficult just to find the listing of when the meetings are. The school board website tells past information, but not future very well until almost the day of the meeting.
But we were given a schedule of KYMEA meetings.
And the public doesn't have access to that.
It's not on the KSB portal until it gets, later.
And
as far as I know, there's no public posting of any of the committee meetings, and there's also full quorum meetings that happen that aren't noticed at all.
So this would be a motion to, as I understand it, to ask our representative, Gary, to ask KYMEA to do these things.
Yeah, I can read it again if I want, but I think I got it all.
I'll have to
Got
go
it from the
back to
tape.
the
Yeah,
specifics
it was
in a
long.
second,
Yeah.
but do we get a second? I didn't hear it.
I'll second. So, is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Go ahead, Don.
Well, no, I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Okay. It might have been hard for you to hear, Jeff. Did you capture everything? Do you have any questions?
No questions. I believe I did.
Okay, good. Okay. So, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passed. Any other items for new and old business?
Just maybe a little comment on some of Steve brought up a good point in the beginning. And, I guess the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around with all that, maybe we can get some more clarity on, is that, I guess one small correction is that the change in rates with KU, LG&KU at the end wasn't unexpected. The municipals made an active decision to choose a higher rate path to have that excess money on hand earlier in the process. And that $3.4 million comes back. If you adjust the LG&KU rates by that only leaves a 0.2, or it leaves a 0.2 cent delta between the 6.3 cents that we're paying KYMEA and the 6.5 cents that we were paying LG&KU. So with that, there's only a few $100,000 over the course of the year delta between those two rates. So while you're right, there was excess revenue there, and we should clearly give that back to our ratepayers, and we did it through the rebate. The actual savings are actually significantly lower in those first few years because of that accelerated rate path that was taken with LG&KU.
My point I was trying to make, my central point I was trying to make was that the KU situation was a past event. It was I'm talking about from today,
As of May 1st?
The KYMEA is current and future. So when someone comes and meshes those monies together, that's not correct.
Well, it is. If you look at, the actual rates are 6.5 cents versus 6.3 cents.
The events were separate, unrelated events. The KU Ash Pond thing was different than KYMEA.
Sure.
That was my point.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay, good. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeff.
This program has been brought to you by Cable 10 Community Television as part of the Frankfort Plant Board.